Money FM 89.3. Best of breakfast. Morning Shot.
Welcome to Morning Shot with me, Audrey Seek. Now we're turning to the United States, where President Donald Trump announced a dramatic change to the H-1B visa program, a new $100,000 fee on applications that employers rely on to fill high-skilled jobs. The sudden proclamation sparked panic and confusion as workers cut short trips, companies sent urgent travel advisories, and foreign governments raised concerns. To help us unpack what this means for U.S. competitiveness, global talent flows, and Asia's role in the changing landscape, we're joined by Bryan DeAngelis, partner and head of Washington office at Penta Group. It's always great to have you on the show, Bryan. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's always great to be here with you, Audrey.
All right. So let's start with the need to knows here, Bryan. You know, many of us know the basics, I think. A new $100,000 annual fee for employers applying for these H-1B visas. I believe that's up from $1,500. So can you help highlight how this new shakeup differs from how the H-1B system currently works?
It's a pretty significant shakeup. First of all, it caught a lot of companies off guard, and there created some panic this weekend as they needed to figure out whether this applied to folks already in the country on H-1B visas or folks who are on their way into the country, and then on a longer term scale, what this means for their plans to build and to innovate. The H-1B program is a proven engine of American innovation, and this fee essentially becomes a tax on our competitiveness. And it really runs contrary to a lot of what President Trump seemingly is looking for when it comes to economic growth and strengthening America's position in the world.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, the announcement triggered panic almost overnight, and we did see some contradictory statements as well from the White House. What does this rollout tell us about how the policy was communicated and the uncertainty that businesses and workers are dealing with?
It's another proof point of how chaotic that White House can be at times. There's a pretty volatile agenda, and the president often acts on, his whim, his intuition, or maybe what he heard last from one of his advisors. I think any other administration making a move like this, you would have seen more planning, more attempts to educate, companies, especially tech companies who are particularly impacted by this. You would have seen a little bit more of a strategic and structured rollout. So our stock market, these companies weren't caught off guard with more questions than answers. But that's not always the case with President Trump. I think a lot of companies are used to that, even if this does throw them into a little bit of a crisis every now and then.
Yeah. Well, you did mention the U.S. tech sector. Can you tell us a little bit about why the H-1B program is so critical to that sector specifically, and which groups or industries will feel the impact of such a steep new fee most strongly?
It will be primarily, I think, the tech sector and really any sector that is on the cutting edge of innovation. I mean, this is a program that brings some of the best and brightest into the United States to help with a company's plans to build or to innovate or to expand some of its offerings. It's typically looking for opportunities that aren't immediately filled by workers in the American workforce. Now, that's not to say it doesn't end up creating a lot of jobs for Americans and a lot of economic growth for the communities and the companies that use these visas. It's a great tool that helps us invest in America versus offshoring. It brings immigrants here to the United States that end up building businesses, creating IP that is valuable, and that has a ripple effect that's really beneficial to the economy. Now, this large fee, I think, will cause a lot of companies to question, if they can make that investment, should they look offshore for some of these opportunities? And even what comes next? Does it stop here with the $100,000 fee?
Yeah. So supporters do say that this will kind of protect American jobs, but do we actually see evidence that H-1B workers are displacing locals, or is that concern kind of overstated?
I think it can be a tad bit overstated, and it gets wrapped up in the larger immigration debate. As I've said to you many times on the show before, there is some merit in terms of the program could probably use some improvements. Not everything works perfectly, but it's usually a pretty small number of H-1B visas every year. And so it's not a major displacement of American workers. And like I said, we've seen more evidence that it leads to growth here on American shores that creates more jobs, more opportunity for Americans, American consumers, and America as a country to stay at the forefront of innovation.
Yeah. All right. So how would a $100,000 fee per H-1B applicant change things for especially the smaller firms and startups compared to giants like, the Amazons and the Facebooks and the Microsofts? Let's talk about the company's hiring strategies from here on out.
Yeah, it's a great point. If you're a smaller company or a startup company that maybe hasn't yet turned a profit or, is pre-IPO, pre-really any type of sales, and you're trying to build, expenses and your budget is critically important. It's something you think about every day. And if your labor costs to bring in the folks you need to help you build that business has gone from, as you said, $1,500 per H-1B visa to $100,000, that's a significant material impact on your bottom line and on your plans to grow. It's going to cause, I think, a lot of startups to think twice about those investments, to look offshore or even not pursue the innovation in and of itself.
Yeah, $1,500 to $100,000. I believe it's 60-fold at this point. And looking at the global implications here, India, I believe, accounts for over 70% of H-1B visas. How do you see this impacting India's tech sector and its ties with the U.S.?
It's going to have a material impact, I think, on the tech sector in the short term. We've already seen that reflected a little bit in the stock market movement. I think the bigger question is, as we look to compete on the global stage, there's been a lot of work between the U.S. and India to form stronger, closer ties. This really starts to jeopardize that and even starts to give incentives to countries like China to look for their own relationships with India and other countries, bring those workers there into China, and maybe potentially give them an advantage based on this opportunity. We obviously don't want to see that. We want to continue to see America be, one of the strongest, if not the strongest economy in the world, leading on innovative industries and technologies. And that's why this particular issue is so troublesome this week.
Yeah. So do you think this really does open up opportunities for Asia and other parts of the world to attract talent and investment that might otherwise have gone to the U.S., or are the ripple effects a bit too unpredictable at this point to tell?
I do think it's an opportunity, and if allowed to kind of continue, it could be a real loss for the United States. And you have to think about it in the context of everything that's happened over the last year between tariffs and some of the questions around the rule of law. It really starts to add up where I think a lot of countries are thinking, is that the right business environment to go work in? Are there better economic outcomes for us through regional partnerships or, looking at other parts of the country that we can partner with, share workers, share that kind of knowledge that leads to our own innovations and makes us a little bit more independent from the United States. I still think there's a lot the United States can gain from these partnerships, and we should be looking to invest more in that, even as we may be trying to reform some of our immigration system. But this was really kind of stepped far, in my opinion, feels a little gimmicky in the sense of it's a 60-fold increase. I don't know what that's based on. And I think it could, again, long-term create some real economic harm for us.
Yeah, and we have seen a lot of pushback already from other governments, from businesses. So looking ahead, do you think such a high fee is sustainable, legally or otherwise?
I think there will be serious legal questions on this front. I also think that the president, does like to make the big splashy announcements. He likes to get the headline. He's a master of the media in that sense, where he knows the impact of this announcement will be remembered way more than any kind of walk back he does in the next few weeks. So it's very possible this was a splash, and we'll see as, we see the economic, and we hear from more companies and CEOs about the challenges it causes, that Trump scales back this program a little bit, brings it back down, maybe not 60-fold, but something more reasonable. But, in a way, he's already gotten his victory with the headlines from it.
Yeah, well, Bryan, there's always something to chat about with you, and the health of the U.S. economy and global talent mobility are tied together, and one policy change can really ripple far beyond America's borders. That was Bryan DeAngelis, partner and head of Washington office at Penta Group. Always great chatting with you, Bryan.
Great chatting with you, too. I appreciate it.
Thank you. You're listening to Money FM 89.3.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.